Okay, so normally I talk primarily about WWE, right? And that's kind of normally my thing. And it's because it's the most popular wrestling promotion, definitely in my area, and I would imagine in my country, and I would imagine probably also in the world, given their their billion social media followers and whatnot. Um, so I mean that's what I primarily focus on. It's not to say that all of my favorite wrestlers are in the WWE. It's certainly the one I'm most familiar with, though. It's on Hulu. I mean, when I had cable up till recently, um, it was on TV on regular old cable twice a week. I didn't have to have a special cable package or venture outside of like the channels that I would normally maybe be scrolling through anyway to even be like, oh shit, it's Tuesday. I forgot. You know what I mean? Like WWE was easy. It was easy. Um, I'm talking about AEW today, though, this time. That's what I'm going to talk about. And it's because Double or Nothing was just a couple of days ago. Today is Thursday. So Double or Nothing was just about a week ago now, I guess. And it was not perfect, right? Like anybody who wants to tell you it was perfect probably is either a bit of a mark or wants something different out of wrestling maybe than I do. There was some silliness and that is fine to me, but is always going to come up maybe a little short of something meant to be a little bit more serious. Not that I don't think that funny-ish stuff has its place in wrestling, because I do. I like the New Day, and they're basically a comedy act. There's something about them that makes my heart warm, though. Uh, so like, and I'm not also gonna sit here and act like I'm super familiar with uh, all of the talent that AEW had to offer, because I'm not. There's people that I just don't know about or had never heard of, and then there's some where like even some people involved in the battle royal, like Jungle Boy and this guy's name Luchasaurus or Lucha Dragon. These are people who I've seen, both Luchasaurus. These are all people I've seen before. They're people I've seen before on the internet because I'm like, oh, Luke Perry's kid's a wrestler, and so I look up and I watch the matches on the internet and on YouTube and stuff, and I'm like, man, this dude's like, he's legit. Like, uh, the other dude, the boy and his dinosaur, right? Uh, it, it I've seen him on ROH. I've only watched ROH maybe like 20 or so times in the last year, which is probably, and it's like syndicated and it's an hour-long program. So, and I'm sure anybody else who watches it probably sees it the same way as in syndicated. I don't know if there's another way to watch it. Maybe if you're an Honor Club member, if you are, give me that password. Um, but I've seen a lot of the guys. I've watched some New Japan stuff. So most of the bigger names, I've seen probably at least a handful of matches, just because I enjoy really good in ring work. Is something that I like, and you can find it there. So this is not the first time I've seen Hangman Page. This is not the first time I've seen Kenny Omega by any stretch, but these are all that I haven't seen any of them the number of times I've seen John Cena, So like, I'm not trying to act like I'm the most informed person going into this AEW stuff, but I also don't want to give the impression that I'm completely unfamiliar with who these people are, what they do, because I'm not. So, man, I tell you what, the started off with Jack Evans and a guy whose name I can't remember, and there might be a little bit of that throughout the El Anguilo or something, maybe. I don't know. Versus the Best Friends, and that it was just fun. It was just fun. Like when you think about a kind of the same match in WWE, like the same point in a pay-per-view card, a tag match that's not for any kind of a title, and what that would probably look like, and how well that would probably get over, and how much care there would be into how the match was set up. I honestly feel like what they're doing is it just the amount of like this match was important. It wasn't important probably, but it was important because they were doing it. It was important to the people involved in it. And you could tell that that's all it took to make it important to the show, right? Uh, Highly entertaining. Obviously, anytime you get to see Jack Evans do all his crazy stuff, that's gonna be. And this seemed like for him maybe a little bit on the tame side. Not as many flippies as I was expecting, and that might be because they were holding out on some of that stuff so that it seemed like a bigger deal later in the night with some of the matches that we got. That was just kind of like a small example of something that I thought that if the same match was on a WWE pay-per-view, it would have been a total, what do they call them? What do the fans call it? P-break match or whatever. I call them cell phone matches where you're playing around on your cell phone instead of watching the wrestling. And so the match that really sticks out in my mind above all the other ones is probably the same match that you would say. Anybody who watched it probably is reaching to the same place when they're coming back on like, man, what did I think about that days later? Cody Rhodes versus Dustin Rhodes. Oh man. Okay, so like the crowd has a lot to do, I think, with what you can kind of feel when you're at home watching on your television. It's not everything. Like if the crowd wasn't into it, it's not to say that I wouldn't have been like, what the hell's wrong with these people? This match is incredible. I've certainly felt that way watching WWE shows in the past where I'm watching the, cruiserweight championship match and nobody's doing anything in the crowd. And I'm like, what are these people? Do they even like wrestling? You know what I mean? So like I've been there, felt that, done that. But an emotional crowd can really add something, I think, to what I'm able to feel at home watching on TV. And what I'm able to feel at home watching on TV during this match, which is, I think, just about every emotion you can feel during a wrestling match. And it's helped out by the chance of like You Still Got It and Never Lost It, when Dustin is kind of kicking Cody's ass, and a very emotional finish. Lots of kicking out of finishers and signatures, and then the end of I booked myself in a Cody says Cody gets the win. Cody says to Dustin, who is just bloody. This is the bloodiest wrestling match without any kind of some of the stuff you might see in a place like CZW makes my stomach churn a little bit. I'm not a big fan per se of hardcore wrestling. In small doses, I really enjoy it, and it's like a holy shit kind of thing. But I'm a bigger fan, and I like some blood in wrestling too. It's gross, but if you watch like an MMA fight or something, these guys bleed. That it happens. It absolutely happens, and so I think a little bit of blood can add to the realism sometimes. And so outside of that, CZW type stuff that can make my stomach a little queasy, this is one of the bloodiest wrestling matches I've seen in a long time. Dustin came out with half his face painted red or part of his face painted red, and by the end of it, you couldn't even tell that any part of his face had ever been painted red because his whole damn face was red. And just blood. I can't imagine what went into cleaning that mat for you could still see the blood on the mat, of course, but not as badly, because they do clean it. There was so much blood, and this was a long match. This was not a short match. So and the bleeding started maybe only halfway through. Man, like I said, at the end, Cody he gets the win, and he says that he's booked himself in for a match at Fight for the Fallen, which I believe is the next AEW show, and it's him versus the Young Bucks, and he says that and I don't need. And I start to, oh God, I know what's coming. My throat's getting all, I know what's coming, and it's not even the first time that I personally have seen these two in a tag team together. Anybody who watched wrestling years and years and years ago, they're going to have seen these two in a tag team together. But, I wasn't always watching wrestling during that time. And I happened to have seen, because it was in a YouTube thing, I happened to have seen some of their matches tag teaming together and stuff, and some of the work that they did together in WWE, which was interesting to me because at the time, I didn't even really know who Cody Rhodes was. All I knew was that Goldust was such a great fucking character when I was a kid. That's my 5th F-bomb, I think, on the channel, and I'm sorry about that. Fuck it. I'm probably going to do it again. As I get more comfortable, it kind of happens every now and then. But Goldust was just a great character when I was growing up. And I think I even appreciated him in retrospect, of course, more than I did at the time, being a 12-year-old kid in 1999. I was a little bit grossed out by some of Goldust's antics. Let's be honest. Some of the stuff he used to, and they used to play on that. That's how they wanted you to feel about it. They were counting on that. The culture was different, and they were very aware of the more base feelings of some of their core demographic, which was, 10 to 15-year-old or 10 to 18-year-old males from low to mid economic backgrounds, you know. So, so yeah, I mean, I think at the time when I was a kid, I probably had some things to say about Gold Dust that would be things I wouldn't be proud of today, probably. Um, but in retrospect, what a character, and what a commitment to that character from Dustin. A lot of that stuff was his idea. You can, watch. He's done a lot of interviews and stuff. A lot of that lingerie, putting on women's underwear stuff was Dustin's idea. I mean, he wanted to make money. He wanted to get over. He wanted to be on TV. He wanted to be on pay-per-views. He wanted to be involved in things that were going to get him paid. You cannot blame the man. And what a commitment to the business and to a character and a gimmick. I'm sure it got a little old for him in the end. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it didn't. Maybe if he had his way, he would have taken that Goldust character right over to AEW with him. But it seems like he's really fully embraced fighting as Dustin Rhodes. So, and it's cool. It's cool as hell. But Cody says to him, he says, I don't need a partner. I don't need my best friend. I'm going to need my brother, my big brother, I think he says. Wrestling will make you tear up sometimes, and this is definitely one of those occasions. So the next match is a tag match between the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks, and after the emotional roller coaster of the last match, this match felt maybe a little bit overbooked with all the false finishes, but I mean that is kind of the Young Bucks and their shtick to a degree. So you can't blame them for it too much, I don't think. It's the first big AEW pay-per-view. You've got the Young Bucks versus the Lucha Bros. Can you blame them for throwing in some false finishes and stuff like that? No, I don't think you can. I don't. I don't think you can. I'm going to a little bit, but it's a minor gripe. The Lucha Bros are awesome all the time, but they're awesome in this match. Pentagon is just at one point in time he gets an arm breaker on one of the Young Bucks, Matt or Nick, I can't remember which one. And it is just what a move. It's so gnarly looking. It just really to me looks like he threw some dude's arm right out of its shoulder socket, right? Like I mean, man, thing is gnarly. And I can't believe that the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers are like the same age. Is the same age as I think the younger of the two Young Bucks is a year older than Ray Phoenix. But Pentagon and I think Matt Jackson, could be wrong about which one's older, are both the same age. They mentioned 34 years old. They mentioned this during the broadcast. for whatever reason, I would have thought that the Jacksons were basically twins. And this is somebody who doesn't watch Being the Elite, and I didn't watch, the Road to Double or Nothing or anything. I didn't watch any of that stuff. I've just seen these guys wrestle a handful of times. I thought they were either twins or just 2 years apart. I had no idea that they were 5 years apart. That's crazy to me. I grew up with a brother who was 4 years younger than me, and we grew up pretty close. But there comes a point where I was 14 and he was 10, and we just weren't doing the same shit. Or I was 16 and he was 12, and we just weren't doing the same stuff. It wasn't until we got to be where I was 29 and he was 25 or whatever. And now into my 30s, where it doesn't feel like he's younger than me. It just feels like we're just two dudes and two peers. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like he's, I mean, maybe even earlier, I might have been when I was 25 and he was 21 or something, But, it's only been for at most 10 years now that I have felt like my little brother was like a peer, And like I said, we were pretty close, but I couldn't have grown up really doing wrestling moves on my brother after a certain point. I would have hurt him. He was a little kid compared to, I mean, I'm a little guy. I've always been a little guy. But, when I was 14, I was certainly probably too big to be doing wrestling moves on my 10-year-old brother. And so when I imagine the 5-year age difference between them, they wrestle like they've just been doing this their whole lives. And they really can't have been doing this more than 10 years, 10, 15 years, Anyway, this was an awesome match. Like I said, full of false finishes. The Young Bucks win it with a Meltzer driver. And then we get the final match of the night, which is going to segue kind of into my next video, where I'm going to talk about the most recent Chris Jericho podcast. But we get Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega, and this is a violent and hard-hitting and not bloody the way that the Rhodes versus Rhodes match was, but really, really violent and really hard-hitting nonetheless. And full of, Kenny Omega must have hit the V trigger 10 times, This was a cool match too. This was really cool. Chris Jericho gets the win, which I found to be a little bit surprising, but he's got a new finisher, a back elbow, and they put it over. Watching it on TV, I had a hard time recognizing that what I saw was a spinning back elbow. I don't know if they'll work on that, what they'll do, but that move might need a little bit of work on its television presentation. But Jericho hit a bunch of code breakers, and at one point I think he got an actual lion tamer in. Jericho gets a win. But out of nowhere, Dean fucking Ambrose shows up and just puts everybody in the dirty deeds. Everyone. Takes Kenny Omega over to the big stack of giant poker chips that were over by the entrance and DDTs him on the top of those two, and looking like Stone Cold Steve Austin or something coming out there glass shatter, blah, 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 blah. You know, it just crazy, crazy stuff. I had a feeling, of course, that John Moxley, Dean Ambrose, that he would be involved in AEW. Obviously, like we all kind of knew that was coming. Tried to stay away from spoilers because I knew I'd be watching this show. So maybe it might have even been out there that he was going to show up. But I read just the other day that Jim Ross didn't even know he was going to show up. Speaking of which, commentary at this show, I have a friend who kind of found it a little bit annoying, and I guess I kind of did at times too with some of the trying to put over every single finishing move, but it is a finishing move. It is a signature move, and it's potentially being presented to an audience that's never seen it before, and he and I both have. We know when we're seeing Kenny Omega do a V-trigger. We know what we're looking at. We know what the one-winged angel is, which Kenny Omega never succeeded at setting up. It's a pretty convoluted move. He never got Jericho fully into it, which is good because it protects his finisher, you know. But Jim Ross, man, that's just the voice of wrestling. And he kind of made a couple mistakes here and there and kind of maybe showed a little bit of rust of having not been doing this, but that's the voice of wrestling. That guy's excitement level. The only other person who comes close is Mauro Ranallo at NXT. In fact, I wish they'd just have Mauro take him off of NXT and put him right with the kick. What's his name? Michael Cole. Get rid of him. No one needs Michael Cole. Just put Mauro on Raw. Oh, it's time. Anyway, yeah. So Double or Nothing was awesome. It was. I hope WWE was watching. Let's just say that. I hope that somebody important at WWE was watching this show, and maybe can see how you run a pay-per-view. I'm not trying to completely trash on WWE or act like AEW is the next big thing for sure, or like that it's going to supplant WWE. I don't think it's going to necessarily. I don't even think that's necessarily what they're trying to do. But for not knowing any of the story, the only thing that even comes close to touching the emotional and entertainment level of what AEW just did, that WWE even comes close to having to offer, I think, is NXT. I'm going to try to get a friend of mine to come over and watch this upcoming takeover on Saturday, and see. This will be maybe the third time, if I can do it, that I've had somebody come in cold and be like, "Man, for not knowing any of the story, for not, I mean, this is really good." Because I wanted to try to get more people to watch, more of my friends anyway, to watch NXT the way that a couple of my friends got me to watch NXT, because it's worth it. And if you ignore it, you're really missing out. So the only thing, as far as I came in mostly cold to this AEW thing, I was not doing myself the favor or them the favor of watching Being the Elite going into it. Nothing like that. And still found it to be compelling for the most part all the way through. I don't think that if you didn't watch anything leading up to it, that at least a third of the pay-per-views WWE has done in the last year and a half, if you didn't watch anything leading up to it, would probably be boring. And half wouldn't come anywhere close to delivering the way this did without knowing any of the stuff. Yeah. All right. I'll see you soon.